Hello and welcome to the Swine Disease Reporting System. This is the report 31, where we will cover data until August 2020. My name is Daniel Linhares with Iowa State.
Hello, my name is Giovanni Trevisan with Iowa State.
And we have a special guest here today, Dr. Daryl Holtkamp, who is a global expert in biosecurity, biocontainment, disease economics, and other topics. Daryl, it's great to have you with us today.
Good morning, Daniel. Thanks for the invitation, Daniel and Giovanni.
Glad to have you with us here today. We're going to cover, as I said, the report 31 for the SDRS. But before that, first part of the report talks about disease detection, right? Monitoring disease, pathogen detection over time, space, age category, so on and so forth. And so I'd like to start asking Daryl, what's the importance of disease monitoring in that large scale over time?
Yeah, I think you can address that from several levels. At the national level, the state level, and the farm level. Monitoring is important at all those levels. For example, at the national level, I remember back to in 2011, after we had done the most recent update on the cost of PRRS for the National Pork Board. I was presenting some of the results at ASV to the PRRS task force, and compared to what the estimated cost was in 2005, it appeared that the cost had gone up a little bit. And so, of course, the question was, well, why is that happening? And the truth was, we had no ability at that time really to address that question because we weren't monitoring the incidence of outbreaks. We weren't monitoring any diagnostic information like you're doing here on a regular basis. And so the simple answer was we really didn't know. And so, that I think was a good motivator then for someone sitting in the room then to go out and try to do a better job. And I think, another example at the national level where I think monitoring makes a big difference is just being able to tell if we're making progress or not for things like biosecurity. For example, when PD virus was introduced into the United States in 2013, there was a lot of work done and investments made in biosecurity, and I think what we were able to do by being able to sort of monitor the incidence through Bob Morrison's efforts at that time, we could tell that the incidence of PRRS went down in response to that. And it has stayed down really since then. And so it was a good way to sort of confirm for everybody that was making these big investments that, it was making a difference. And so, and then the last thing at national level is there's been some discussions recently about the possibility of maybe even trying to eradicate PED virus now and based on the relatively low incidence of that. And so, again, without having the ability to monitor that, we would really just kind of be guessing at whether or not, it might be the right time for something like that. At the state level, it serves as an early warning system. Are there things that are changing that we need to be paying attention to? And so it has value there as well. And then finally, at the farm level, monitoring there, really trying to understand what disease is doing in our system. How much is it costing us in terms of lost productivity? It's very difficult to make investment decisions. How much time, resource, and other money to invest in reducing disease if you don't know what it's costing you. And so you have to have some ability then, I think, to be able to monitor disease at a herd level, just to know what to invest to reduce the disease.
So it's a lot of information, making easier for people to make decisions based on data, right?
That's right.
Getting more into the weeds here, and in the first page of the report where it talks about detection of PRRS virus RNA over time by PCR, right? And so, Giovanni, in this page here with the PRRS data, it shows that the detection level it's within the expected for this time of the year based on the forecasting models. And so, what else would you like to highlight here from this page?
That's correct. The detection of PRRS virus is in the downward side of the curve for expected for this period of the year, and we are reaching that point where we expected to go upward. So the detection in August was very similar to July, and we still observe a moderate decrease in adult sow farm from July to August, And the advisory council did point out that this detection is according to the expected and what they are observing in the field for this time of the year.
Daryl, talking about PRRS detection here, in your point of view, your opinion, how effective has the swine industry been on managing PRRS virus? We hear a lot of people saying, PRRS is still causing problems, PRRS is still a bad disease going on, but from your perspective, how effective has the industry been 30 years now, right?
Yeah, that's a good question, Daniel. Unfortunately, we had an opportunity a few years back here now to update the cost of PRRS. It's something that back in 2014, the National Pork Board had a fairly major strategic planning activity or session, and one of the goals that came out of that was to reduce the cost of PRRS by 20% by the year 2020. And so I was contacted by the Pork Board to do let's say it wasn't a full-blown reassessment of the cost of PRRS, but just to update, provide some estimates on how the cost might be changing. Mm-hmm. And so we did that. The last one we did was in the fall of 2018. And by the way, these were done for Pork Board's internal purposes. They're published in a National Pork Board report, but not in the peer-reviewed literature. But the last update we did was in the fall of 2018. And so we were looking for, what has changed since 2010? And I think that gives us what we found there kind of gives us a sense for whether we're making progress and why we're making progress with PRRS. And there were really three major things that it looked like were going on. One was, overall reduction in the cumulative incidence of outbreaks every year. So that was number one. Number two was a shift away from elimination to control. And so what that essentially looked like is, if you look at the reports from the Swine Health Monitoring Project, you can very clearly see that the percentage of herds that are in Category 4, the negative category, that would only get there if they were established negative or had eliminated the virus, that the percentage of herds in that category has steadily gone down, and the percentage of herds in what we consider the category where your destination is if you're going to try to control the virus, which is positive, stable, Category 2, the percentage of herds in that category has gone way up. So producers and veterinarians over time have sort of moved away from trying to eliminate the virus and moved towards just trying to control the virus, with the idea that if they do have an outbreak in those herds that they're controlling the virus, then it's not going to be near as severe as in a herd that's negative for the virus. So there's some immunity there. And so that's the one, the two kind of things that have happened in terms that affect the percentage of herds that are affected versus unaffected by PRRS virus. And then the third thing that happened, or that seems to be happening, is that there are improvements in managing these positive, stable herds. And so if we're able, and that only applies when we're able to avoid outbreaks in those herds. So as long as you can avoid an outbreak, maintain a herd as a positive, stable herd, it appears that the productivity in those herds has greatly improved compared to 2010. In fact, that in the herds we looked at, the productivity is really approaching that in negative herds. So it's not too far off of that. And so the net effect of all those changes, Daniel, is that the Pork Board's goal, we got very close, if not able to hit that in the fall of 2018. Last time we measured that, we were right at 20% reduction in the overall cost of PRRS as a result of all those changes I just mentioned. So yes, I think we are making progress there. The issue would be to try to maintain that, and I think that's where we'll have to keep improving biosecurity. So,
all right, thanks for the update. So moving on here to the second page, topic 2, where we're going to talk about detection of RNA of enteric coronaviruses by PCR. So the PED, Delta, and TGE. And Giovanni, from very similar to the PRRS picture here, if I understand correctly, those detection of those pathogens it's in the lower boundaries there as expected within the forecast parameters. So what else would you like to highlight from this page?
That's correct. We are in the downward side of the curve for this time of the year. And as we look for this on the state level, our monitoring at the state level is within the expected baselines for this time of the year. But the Advisory Council reminds us to watch closely to monitor animal health in the herds as we go towards the colder months where we could have a higher number of outbreaks and detection of these agents.
Yeah, and that brings back to what Daryl was talking about, the importance of biosecurity. So Daryl, both for PRRS and for PED, those are kind of seasonal diseases, where in the summer months we have lower detection, fall, winter, higher detection, then summer lower again. So we're in that point of time where detection it gets as low as it can get compared to the previous years. And so if the history repeats itself in the following weeks or months, detection is going to go up for PRRS and for coronaviruses. So in your mind, what message how can we help the industry to kind of break that cycle and keep those down instead of going up? How can we break that cycle and beat the odds and keep that detection low?
Yep. Yeah. Well, of course, the main tool that we have to work with then is biosecurity there, right? To try to prevent the introduction of virus into these herds. Now, once it's there, of course, there's lots of management strategies that we need to focus on, vaccinations and controlling the environment and all those. But I think really focusing on biosecurity this time of year is always a good idea. And unfortunately, I'm really becoming an advocate that biosecurity requires hand-to-hand combat. It's not something that you can rely on just lists of practices to know what to do. Every production system is different. Every farm is different, and you really have to look at the steps in the production processes. Like, for example, how they raise and deliver and enter gilts into the herd, or how they produce and deliver and enter semen, or how employees enter the farm and what they're doing when they're away from the farm. You have to look at all those processes, and that's where the hand-to-hand combat comes into play there. And what you really need to do is assess where the hazards are. And again, these are going to be specific to each system, specific to each farm. And that's not something you can start doing in the fall. That's something you got to be doing year round, so that as we come to this time of year, then hopefully by now you can identify some control measures to deal with those hazards. And so this is the time of year to be implementing those. And some producers have taken the approach of doing things seasonal, like biosecurity practices that are more seasonal. I think for most of them, you're probably better off once you get them implemented and people are doing what you expect them to do. Probably just continue those, but rather than trying to drop them during the summer months and then pick them up. But there are some biosecurity practices that cost a lot of money. And you may not want to do those year round, so that's fine to do them seasonally. But I think this is the time of year to be really thinking about that. But again, biosecurity is not something that you can do just once a year. It's an ongoing process.
So, anyways, to break the cycle, you believe it's not vaccine, it's not anything. It's biosecurity, biocontainment can do it, right? For those viral diseases at least.
Yeah, that's right. I think especially for PED virus, it's when it really gets down to it, vaccinations may have a role in helping that, but it really does come back to biosecurity.
All right, and good message that biosecurity is year round, not just in the fall or beginning of the fall. It's year round. All right. So moving forward here to the topic 3 of the report, detection of Mycoplasma pneumoniae. DNA by PCR. And Giovanni, the seasonal trend for Mycoplasma is a little bit different than that of PED and PRRS, where we're in the period of the year where it's on the rise, right? Mycoplasma, but it's still within the expected boundaries of the forecast model. So, what else would you like to highlight for the audience here in terms of Mycoplasma detection?
Oh, that's correct, and we did not have any other additional comments from Advisory Council. Besides that, we are seeing that in the field, and it's according to the expected for this period of the year.
Okay. And so, Daryl, talking about Mycoplasma and economics, in your opinion, is it worth it to move to eliminate Mycoplasma from the herds, be aggressive on Mycoplasma elimination? Is control enough? How do we approach that with producers, veterinarians?
Yeah, so That's really an individual farm, individual system decision. But overall, I would say that it looks to me like that in many cases, and I'll say most cases, it is a good economic decision. It's really a capital investment decision where you're going to make some investment up front to eliminate mycoplasma pneumonia, and then you're going to reap the rewards or benefit of that over a long period of time. And so the return on investment then hinges on, first, the probability of success. So you could end up spending a lot of time and investing a lot of resources and not be successful, so you're not going to get the benefit. So that's number one. And then the number two is how long you keep it negative after you get it out. And so both of those, if you're doing a net present value analysis or a cost benefit analysis, that return on investment depends on those two things: probability that you're going to be successful and how long it takes to keep it negative. And based on what I've seen in the field, talking to veterinarians and practitioners and producers who are doing these, they've got that down where the probability of success is pretty high. Probably not 100%, but if things are done correctly and attention is paid to details, then the probability of success is pretty high. And mycoplasma is not like PRRS and PD virus where, PRRS virus especially, where it's relatively hard to keep out of a herd. It seems to be fairly challenging, actually, I'll say, or difficult for that virus to be transmitted from one herd to another. It happens, but it's not nearly as common as happens with PRRS virus. And so the expectation about how long you can keep it out, how long you're going to get the benefits of having a negative herd, that's going to be fairly high too. So yeah, I think in many cases, it probably is a wise economic decision.
And just because of the methods, we see here people piggybacking, right? So if they have to eliminate PRRS mycoplasma, they can do that, kind of combining the strategies and do that at once.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Double up on the benefits. Maybe a little extra cost that way up front, but yeah, absolutely, that makes sense.
All right, so that was what we had to cover about pathogen detection. Now we're going to move to the last page of the report where it talks about disease diagnosis here at Iowa State VDL using what the diagnosticians call diagnostic codes. So this page here is not about pathogen detection, it's disease detection, right? Then Giovanni, so this is reported by syndrome, right? So disease detection by respiratory, digestive, neurological diagnosis. And so PRRS and influenza continue to lead the respiratory page. Rotavirus, E. coli continue to lead the digestive or enteric cases, and strep suis continues to lead the nervous cases, right? So, and you do monitor for signals. Would you like to highlight anything for this month?
Yeah, that's correct. We do monitor over 30 agents by signals in the background of this data. And last month we did present the information that coccidiosis was above the expected during some weeks. And during July to August, we saw that the digestive diagnosis continues to give signal, and that was associated with signals in E. coli. There is a restricted number of cases of clostridiosis, but there is a signal over there as well. And additional to that, there is another disease, the mulberry herd disease, that there is a restricted number of cases, but there was signal in that number of diagnoses for that disease as well.
That may be associated with a few systems or few regions, right?
Right, that could be.
Oh, so Daryl, that brings us to another question, right? We're talking about the big ones, PRRS and the enteric coronaviruses, even mycoplasma, but there is also those diseases affecting the herds, right? From E. coli to salmonella to other types of mycoplasmas. And so how do you approach that with producers in terms of how do you manage those diseases? Probably not eliminate because they're so endemic, but still, how do you control? How do you manage those in general? How do you approach that?
Well, yeah, you're right. Those are all diseases that are ubiquitous, and so you're not going to be. They're not going to be the focus of biosecurity to try to keep them out because they're just going to be there, and so then you're left with managing both the immunity of the pigs, in some cases antimicrobials or other pharmaceuticals, and then just sanitation, right, and your basic management of the environment. So, it's always good, I think, to go back to the epidemiological triad, where you get the pig who is the host and the environment, and then you got the pathogen themselves, and you've got all those interactions. And so, of course, that's going to be specific to each individual pathogen, but I guess in the short amount of time we have, that maybe better stop it with that answer.
Yeah, no, but good example to go back to that triad and understand the interactions and understand what can you do in terms of environment, manage immunity, and sometimes tackle the pathogen itself with some health tools, right? Mm-hmm. So great discussion. What else? Your final message to our listeners regarding today's discussion?
Yeah, well, I've been giving a lot of thought lately here to how the swine industry manages infectious disease compared to how we've been managing with COVID, and I think it's really rather interesting. At the end of the day, I've come to the conclusion that I think I'd rather be a pig. Just a couple of examples of why I think we do a better job of managing infectious diseases in pigs than we've done with COVID. You look at the response that we had to PED virus in the United States in 2013, and how quickly we were able to ramp up both the development of tests, PCRs, antibody tests, and so forth, and then how quickly the veterinary diagnostic labs were able to ramp up and handle the testing load. And you compare that to the response we've had today with COVID, and again, I think I'll take the side of the pig again. And second, even with sufficient ability to test now, we still lack for COVID an effective monitoring strategy, and we have no way of classifying populations like we do with PRRS virus, and now there's a Mycoplasma pneumoniae classification system that'll be published soon. And for COVID, imagine if we had the ability to monitor these populations and then estimate the incidence. And then to classify those populations based on that incidence, either at a national, state, local, or even a company or university level, as is relevant for us here at Iowa State. The students, the faculty and staff at ISU are essentially a population, right? And so a classification system would enable us then to develop measurable goals, for managing disease, and then also communicating things about the disease, or facilitate the communication about where we stand, relative to achieving those goals. Are we hitting them? Are we close? Are we not achieving them? And if we are close, do we need to take more drastic control measures, or are we able to maybe ease some control measures? And that last question suggests that you can have status specific control measures. And so that everyone knows what to expect, right? And it's not just all of a sudden somebody announces something and all the bars have to shut down again. And so it's today it's very hit and miss. And so what that would require then is estimating the incidence would require a coordinated effort, and you can't rely on voluntary sampling. Unfortunately, you'd have to, there have to be some sort of random sampling of the population. Now, granted, with pigs, when we tell them we're going to sample them, they don't get a say, whereas people do. But I still believe that can be managed. But today we're relying entirely on voluntary testing and reporting as well. So you get both of those. Some people get tested, and that doesn't always get reported. And so we're stuck with relying on statistics like the positivity rate, which is primarily a function of who decides to get tested. It's not a really good indicator. And then hospitalization rates and death rates are probably good indicators, but they're lagging, right? So it can be 2 weeks, 3 weeks, even a month before we see if things are changing. So that's not really sufficient either. So just to wrap up again, I think it's very interesting, I think, just to follow this and try to glean some lessons from it. But at the end of the day, I think, swine producers and veterinarians kind of deserve a pat on the back. And really, I think it's, so for me anyway, it's highlighted just, how effective we have been. I mean, there's a lot of work to do, but things like the swine disease reporting system, like you and Giovanni and Edison are doing, I think, contribute a significant amount to that good track record that we have in the swine industry for managing infectious diseases in pigs. So kudos to you. And again, I think a pat on the back for all swine veterinarians and producers.
Yeah, a lot of times people focus on the negative things, right? But it's a good reflection to look back and see how sometimes effective the population sciences veterinary medicine, preventive vet medicine has been, right, in terms of characterize disease incidence, prevalence in farms and make decisions based on that, right? Make decision trees, contingency plans, all based on those metrics. You look at the human side, as you said, there are some challenges, but people are pretty much close to the dark, right? Regarding disease activity in the population and what can you do?
Yeah, I think that's accurate reflection. Sometimes we feel like we're in the dark there. So yeah, I think there is certainly a lot of room for improvement there.
All right. Well, that's what we had for today. Great conversation. Thanks again for joining us, and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Turning on soft and low, baby, let's go.